just arrived. It's 10 to 6 in the morning. We've been going for a little while logistically, sorting our bits out. I'm totally awake. I've just had a very posh flat white. Let's go find some ducks.
Morning, gents. Well, I think the plan for this morning is here we are. It's early January. Because of an arrangement that we have with our landlord, our shooting season finishes at the end of January. We don't actually have the 20-day extension. So because we're kind of running out of time, this morning is more of a shakedown for either another trip out before the end of our season, or perhaps holding something over until next year. As you can see, wildfowling is significantly different from most other forms of shooting. And because the area that we're going to be visiting it in pitch darkness, there are some horrendous trip hazards. There's mud, there's all sorts of unpleasantness, all in pitch darkness. So it's a question of familiarising you gents with the terrain, so that if we decide to do something a bit later, which involves, for instance, going out across the mud out onto the islands, you are at least operating in an environment that you have some degree,
a little bit more familiar,
some degree of familiarity, and the whole thing won't come as a shock to the system. Because it's very time sensitive, and we've got a bit of time left at the moment. I've built in a bit of a time buffer. But if, for instance, you get stuck in a creek and the sun comes up, we've missed the flight, and that's it. It's over and done with. So this is often what we do with newer members. Is the first trip is really not done with the expectation of getting much in the bag, and plus it's an opportunity too, because we'll be sitting next to each other for obvious bird identification reasons. You don't know how safe I am with a gun, and I don't know how safe you are, and I think we can probably assume a reasonable degree of safety.
I don't know if we could trust each other this morning, but
I think so. But as you can see, there are occasions when you're shooting with a complete stranger in total darkness.
Oh yes.
And handling a gun in the dark, it can be a slightly different experience than handling it in broad daylight. So it's for safety reasons, those that I just mentioned, that we're doing what we're doing today, and it's not so much a bag filler. So I'll apologise now if we don't come away with a sack.
I'm always just happy to be out. I'm always just happy to be out. Well, it's not that cold, which you say is bad, but I feel is particularly good.
Well, yes, I see your point. I had hoped when I got up this morning, I had a really nice crispy frost on my car, but what we might have found was some frost, some ice on the fresh water inside the marsh. What that would have done would have made it uncomfortable for the duck to sit about in the fresh water, and they'd have moved out into the open harbour. Sadly, where I live a few feet above sea level, now that we've dropped down to sea level, sadly the temperature's gone up a degree or two, and there is no frost. So we shall see what we shall see. If we crack on in a minute with our gear, as I explained before, the hide that I had intended to use on the shore this morning turned out to be non-functional, and I haven't had a chance to replace it. So we're going to be sitting in a fairly exposed position, but experience tells me if we sit still,
you can still have a bit of time with it. Exactly.
The birds are not that gun shy, that they won't come near us at all. So fingers crossed, we're on with a chance. I think that's about it. If we sort our kit out now and head for the shore.
Looking forward to it.
Let's go.
I haven't used a cartridge belt in years, but it seemed very appropriate for the occasion. Nick's very kindly given me a box of Ely Lightning Steel to use, and 36 gram threes. So, let's chuck some in and hope for the best. What else have we got here? Well, it'd be apparent that we've got a couple of different types of Lightning Steel. We've got 36 threes and 32 threes. So blue for one and red for much more death. too bad. What's your score when it comes to, I presume it's a bit like pigeon shooting, that you can make a little bit of noise, but you just have to be dead silent? Or how is their hearing more important in this scenario?
As we heard a few minutes ago, out in front of us, although the tide is right out, there's a channel that passes between these islands. You'll see it as the sun comes up, and out on these mud flats, and particularly on the edges of the channel, is where the birds will be feeding. As we heard, there's quite a few teal out on the mud, and also some widgeon calling. They might well be able to hear us now, but either human voices don't bother them or they're so used to them that there's no real advantage to being deadly silent, if you see what I mean. It's more noise and movement when the birds are moving that's likely to cause them to veer off. I shall be using a call where it's appropriate, which might have some effect. He says with his fingers crossed that there's a good chance we might see quite a few Canada geese a bit later on, but this late in the season the Canadas have got their routine absolutely sorted out. They'll wait till the sun gets up, they get a bit of warmth on their backs, and then they'll probably move around inside the marsh. There's nothing to force them to come out, so it's kind of a bit, you know, potluck. Sometimes if you're lucky, where they've been roosting in on the marsh, a fox will have run through them at night, caused them to lift, and obviously because it's dark, it's easier for them to land in the dark out on the mud flats than it is on the dark marsh. So there's a million and one different scenarios, and it's kind of potluck. Normally what I would do is we would shoot strictly turn and turn about. What I'm never too happy about is having, you know, battery shooting at a single bird. The way I look at it, particularly if you've got a 3-shot semi-automatic, if you can't hit it with 3 shots, it probably deserves to get away. Brent's call is a hunk. It's not like most of the other geese. I was surprised that they turned, which made me think that it was that lead bird that was pulling them round, if you see what I mean. They were all Brent. There's a couple of grey lags in amongst them. I mean, you get all sorts of oddities.
Would you take one out of the pack?
I wouldn't normally, no, not unless it was a very, very clear shot. Flying almost complete darkness. Now I'd like to kind of to be able to see where they're going. The widgeon here are more driven by the tide than the daylight conditions, if you see what I mean. The Canadas distinctly like as much light as they can possibly get, which, as I say, is why once the sun gets up there's a much better chance of having a few Canadas flying around than there is at the moment. Having said that, of course, it's all tide driven, and very often the best tidal conditions might well be in the worst conditions of light, but it would still mean that the tide would prioritise the light conditions. Have you seen something?
Doesn't just go out.
Oh, did it? Yeah, okay. I think, like a lot of good management, it probably happens in a fairly discreet and understated sort of way, and you don't notice that it's taking place. I mean, at the moment on the marsh behind us, they're cutting back a lot of the vegetation because the grazing regime's changed. And some areas have been overtaken with bushes, excuse me, which they kind of gradually creep up on you. I think sometimes, you know, you get to know an area and then you're away from it for a while, and you come back to it and you think, oh my God, look how much all the thorn bushes have encroached upon it. So we're in the middle of a big purge on that at the moment. Plus, I suspect also that it's a question of making some decisions as to what sort of habitat you want to prioritise.
To be managed is just
Yeah. I mean, in the terms of kind of management of this place, this is a different. The seaward side is a different kettle of fish. With a flintlock, on a good day, you would have a chance of a shot at something. The whole essence of punt gunning is that you can actually go after the birds. You're not entirely dependent upon the more random circumstances of them flying over you. You can actually go out and get them, basically, and that's why it was developed to such a sophisticated degree in this part of the world, because basically that was the method that suited this area the best. If you go up on the Wash, for instance, you get the morning flight will consist of tens of thousands of pink-footed geese flying over you in waves. Really, well, it's a question of getting the conditions right, primarily the wind, so that some of them are low enough to shoot. But you can often, I don't guarantee, but you will see lots of birds. I sometimes don't know what's more frustrating, to see lots and have nothing shot, or not to see any. The end result is the same.
There's a hell of a lot of bits pitching in down there, isn't there?
Yeah, see all those brent are going into that pond there. I mean, the trouble is that because what will happen here, and this is just a geographical issue, the sun will come up over there and be straight in your face. And the Canadas will be coming in from a whole variety of different locations, but flying in this direction. With a bit of wind, they'll get up a bit. But on a day like today, they'll come in 2 feet off the mud, and they'll be on top of you before you see them, believe it or not. So, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, then towards the end of September, early October, you get the first of the widgeon come through, and it's a curious phenomenon. You get big packs of widgeon moving through. Excuse me. They'll be passing through us, they'll be going right down the West Country, and a lot of them will carry on flying due south into France. Some will go down as far as Spain and North Africa. And most of those are young birds. No one's quite worked out how they navigate, how they find their way to all these places that they've never been to before. But there's significant numbers of young birds amongst them. And then when they've passed through, you get another sort of bit of a trough. And at the moment, we're kind of locked into that sort of those late season movements. There's not much of a migration. If we get severe weather in other parts of the country, or indeed severe weather here, there'll be some sort of internal rearrangement of birds. All the birds that have drifted inland onto ponds and ditches and up the Arun Valley, up the the Wildfowling Trust place at Arundel, and it will push all of those birds out onto the harbour within 24 hours. Oh yes, and again, it's one of those examples of the place being full.
I presume there's a bag limit for your members?
Indeed, yes, we have a bag limit of 10 per day.
It's quite serious then.
Well, it's better than a poke in the ear with a sharp stick.
Yeah.
And it's enough to justify the concept of sustainable harvest.
Yeah.
It's enough, to take home out for your dinner kind of thing.
I presume no members take the mickey with that?
No, good Lord, no.
In terms of they're not allowed to go shooting 10 when the time is good.
I think one of the things that we sort of pride ourselves in is, yes, it is a club, but it's more like an extended family. And we don't expect, and indeed people do not, take the mickey out of the club rules. Because they're a decent bunch of blokes, and we try and recruit the sort of people that simply wouldn't appear to want to do that in the first place. A bunch of something coming in. Is that more Brent?
Yeah, quite big, isn't it?
And they're all going into freshwater ponds up on the bank.
Yeah, there's dozens of ponds behind us, literally.
shortage of those, are there?
Sorry?
No shortage of Brent.
No, absolutely not.
I presume if they do these things, it's never going to go on the licence once it's complete.
I think that's true. I think equally, and to be honest with you, as someone who has to manage wildfowling in an area where they are extremely common, I think putting the Brent back on the or taking it off the protected list would have the potential to be a PR disaster. It would. The way that you would have to manage it would be to introduce some serious bag limits.
Well, I was going to say the American method would work quite well, one per day sort of thing.
Although the problem, of course, then, excuse me, it is right in front of this. You see what I mean now about they come out of the sun and you can
Straight off the floor and they do pick up something.
The problem then is that it opens the floodgates. It opens the floodgates for the concept of individual species bag limits. And
You got a problem with that old sort of concept, do you?
well, I think the problem is that, I mean, just as a for instance, the northern pintail at the moment, its numbers are significantly fluctuating. It's got more to do with redistribution of species and in particular short stopping during migration than any problem with the pintail numbers. The problem is that the people who are, the other side, the antis, if you like, they use its slight reduction in numbers in this country as evidence of a decline and say you should stop shooting it.
Usual public ignorance on that subject.
And of course, people buy into that and think, oh, it's a rare bird, why are you shooting it? Well, it isn't a rare bird at all. It's common as muck. It's just that it's just that its distribution pattern is changing. So you do that for Brent, and there's the possibility that you could do it for pintail in particular. In some areas, teal. It opens up a nightmare scenario of the ability, again, in America, or
Which English?
like the canvasback in America. You get in some states and some years there is no open season on the canvasback at all. But the same applies to its numbers. It's not an uncommon bird. It's just that its distribution changes on a.
It's one of any sort of bureaucratic party to look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the moment the kind of system that we've got, particularly the system that we've got here, it works. It's not overly complicated. It doesn't require enforcement because, like any system, it's going to be self-regulating. It's got to at least be sensible to stop people succumbing to the temptation of abusing it.
Very much self-policing because no one else is going to police it until it's too late.
Yeah,
it gets banned for no real reason other than legislation.
Exactly. I mean, and since we're talking about sensitive subjects like that, the one thing you do have issues with is fed float ponds.
You've been there.
Yeah. If you're rearing lots of mallard and shooting on a pond, I've got no problem with that at all. You're essentially taking out what you put in. But often you see, particularly on my friend Facebook, you see people with flight ponds boasting about shooting wild birds in large numbers, which of course they've got no control over the numbers of birds, over the surplus of that particular species. And certainly that's classic wildfowling, I'm afraid. They really took a long time before they paid any attention to that call at all.
Well, they did, didn't they?
But I lost them just here. I think they dropped back into one of the ponds behind us.
That was an impressive turn, right? They were a long way out.
I think wildfowling has been through a significant period of change, and I can't see any particular issues on the horizon at the moment that are a grave cause for concern. The last one, of course, was the challenge of the change from lead to non-toxic shot. That kind of rocked the sport back on its heels for a bit. There was a period of about 5 years when the future looked very bleak indeed, particularly in the early days of steel shot, when anyone who was there at the time was first to agree that, generally speaking, the stuff was crap. Here we are 20 years later. Steel shot now works extremely well. A lot of the people, like myself, who can remember using lead for wildfowl wouldn't want to go back to it anyway. The non-toxic shot thing, as I say, I think was the biggest issue. There's a few kind of administrative things in terms of like English Nature and Natural England, whatever they call themselves this week, in terms of consents. That Basque are doing a sterling job with that in getting an element of common sense into a government department that is just groaning under the weight of its own bureaucracy. You know, I come here with a gun and I've every intention of using it, but
of course,
I don't get disappointed if I don't. And you know, if I can get half a dozen birds at the end of a good day, I'd be more than happy with that, and that even translates to pigeon shooting. You know, for me, a good day pigeon shooting might be 30 or 40 birds. I'd be quite happy with that.
Still a damn good day pigeon shooting.
Yeah. You know, the days of feeling you've had a bad day if you've shot less than 100 have long since gone for me. Shit. More French.
Sort of break the mud off, like,
Yeah.
that's big.
Well, you see what I mean? The bloody things, they fly at 0 feet, they creep up on you, and suddenly, you know, and suddenly they're there.
It's only 70 yards away, not bent down a bit of a ditch.
Yeah.
Probably 8,500.
Yes. Suggested we've got the first jogger of the day coming along on the seawall, so if we pack up and just go for a bit of a walk in that direction. End of the season and get the tide conditions optimum, then, you know, hopefully we might be able to put some of this on the end of the barrel.
Our problem generally is not going to be talking about something when they do.
No. Thank you.
Absolute experience. I genuinely look forward to next time.
Absolutely.
I hope you've learned something, because I certainly have, as usual.
Well, perhaps next time forget the tide and the wind and the weather generally in the right order, you've seen that there's plenty of birds around. No shortage of quarry species. Perhaps next time we'll get it right.
I think if we pay a bit more attention to what we're supposed to be here for, just working and having fun,
and that
we would have been taken full advantage.
Yes.
Apart from that, thank you very much again, and
absolutely, mate. My pleasure. My pleasure.
See you soon.
All the best.
Hi guys, welcome to the gun shop.